Welcome to Find Me the Money. Today, our guest is Kate Anthony. She is the author of the brand new book, The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage. She's host of a critically acclaimed and New York Times recommended podcast called the Divorce Survival Guide Podcast, and she's the creator of the groundbreaking online coaching program, Should I Stay or Should I Go? It helps women make the most difficult decision of their lives using coaching tools, relationship education, geeky neuroscience, community support, and, most importantly, deep self-work. Kate's certified as a domestic violence advocate, a co-parenting specialist, and a high-conflict divorce coach. That was a mouthful. Kate, welcome to Find Me the Money. Now, I've been on your podcast twice, so it's nice to finally have you back on mine.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we are talking today about this new book, The D Word, which we see behind you. The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage. And you've been working in the divorce space for a really long time. This book, to me, feels like a real crescendo in your career. Like, you were big in the divorce space before, but this book really takes the cake.
I mean, listen, I hope so. We'll see. I hope so. Thank you for saying that.
Well,
Thank you.
I know how much work a book is, and I know that it took your heart and soul. I've read the book. It is fantastic. There is so much information for any woman who's going through divorce, but I have to know. So why did you want to write this book, and why did you want to write it right now?
I wanted to write this book because I really wanted one place for all of the stuff that I talk about all the time. I felt like there needed to be a guide for women who are struggling that really understands why they're struggling, like the specifics of what's happening in their relationships and in their marriages, right? Like there's so much happening. And I needed to outline it really clearly for them. And just, and it was, it's born of doing this for as long as I've been doing it and working with as many women as I've worked with and running my Facebook group and seeing thousands upon thousands of women's stories every single day. And just knowing that, when you're going through it and it's your life, this is your single experience that's happening to you alone, and you don't have perspective. It's the first time, probably for most people, that they're experiencing this. And when, from my perspective, I see themes recurring and recurring and recurring and recurring. And I need women to know that they're not alone, that what they're suffering from is happening all over the place to thousands of women. And that I wanted to distill it all down so that they could stop feeling alone and like they're crazy, right? Because I see, again, these stories recurring over and over and over and over again, right? And so there are themes that I just wanted to make sure everybody knew,
I think that the single most common thing that I see in divorce for women is how isolating it is. So every divorce story is different. There are different facts, different details, but every woman I've ever talked to in the divorce space has felt alone in some regard in their divorce.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a lot of information out there, and now there's so much information. It's wonderful. But it is very isolating, even though, right. That you're you read something and you're like, yeah, that's kind of my story, but not quite. It's a little bit different. Right. And I just want people to know that even the minute differences are of a kind, right? It's part of the same, series of buckets. Even if it feels different, it feels unique, and it is, right? You said every story is a little bit different, but the themes are really so similar.
I really felt like your book was a handbook of sorts. Like you could pick up the book, you could be in the process of divorce and say, I have this problem in my divorce, or I have this question, and literally go find a chapter that addresses it. It feels like a handbook, and I love that about it.
Thank you.
But not like a hard read. It's not a difficult read.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for saying that. I really want it to be as accessible as possible. I want it to be so that It's not hard, right? I think there are parts that can be overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming, but I also think that I tried to lay it out so that it's accessible and clear.
Well, you succeeded in that regard.
Thank
Now,
you.
you've mentioned women. You and I both have a passion for working with women in the divorce process. And for me, it's because women have been at a disadvantage in this process financially forever.
Mhm.
And the men on social media who troll my accounts always tell me how women are getting rich from divorce, but that is simply not true. That is not true, but I am here to level that playing field. For you, what made you know that you wanted to focus on women?
Well, I mean, it's similar, right? I mean, first of all, when I first started this, I worked with men. Um, every once in a while, I still do. But more often than not, first of all, women are the ones who are consuming personal development work overwhelmingly,
Yes.
in overwhelming numbers, more than men. So there's that. There's also the fact that I am a woman. Like, I don't know what it's like to be a man and have like the male experience, which is why it cracks me up when I see, men working with women in a lot of ways, in a lot of, because I'm like, you don't have literally the first clue about what it is. That's not to say that, listen, we need more men in this space, but we need more men working with men. Um,
Right.
but the fact of the matter is that women are the ones that are doing the work. And so and similar to you, women are being victimized. Women are overwhelmingly the victims of domestic violence, including financial abuse and all other forms of abuse. The numbers are skewed very clearly. Um, and, you know, we have research and data that backs that up. These men who come in and that are like, women are getting rich off of divorce actually don't have any science. They just think that paying child support or spousal support is somehow women getting rich.
Right.
Um,
When, let's be honest, it covers a fraction
oh,
of living
almost
expenses.
nothing. Almost nothing. It's ridiculous. So anyway, so yeah, I mean, because I've always been a champion for the underdog, I've always been somebody who believes in, social justice and justice for those who are downtrodden and victimized. And I'm a huge feminist. I'm a huge feminist. I know the, levels of inequality in our culture that put women at all sorts of disadvantages, in particular financial.
I
So,
often ask myself why these trolls on social media are so threatened by someone who provides resources for women.
what do you
If you
think?
got your act together,
They're
I
so
mean, why were you
fragile.
worried what we're doing over here?
They're so fragile because,
Yeah,
equality for women in their mind means, it's like they think it's pie. They think that if we have more and our equal share of the pie, then they're going to have less. And
right?
it's not true. And it's just so sad how fragile they are.
Right? They just don't understand that me providing resources for women takes nothing away from them.
No,
It doesn't matter to them. Move
nothing.
on. Go watch someone else's content.
Right.
Okay, so why are women so unhappy in their marriages?
Mm. Um, well, because of everything we just talked about.
Right.
Because women do an overwhelming amount of labor. When marriage benefits men on the backs of our emotional, psychological, domestic labors, right? All of the labor that we put into raising children, even, when you have two working parents, statistically, all of this research shows that women are still doing a disproportionate amount of the domestic labor. Even if they're the high income earners, even if they are the
Yes,
breadwinners in the
I know
family, they're
this.
still doing more domestic labor. Um, they're working harder in the home, whether it's, taking care of the children or managing, the groceries, the cleaning, the all cooking, cleaning, shopping, all of that stuff. They did a study where they said that they determined that the happiest of cis hetero population group, the happiest are married men, then single women, then single men, and the least happy population group are married women. So
Wow.
married women are the least happy, and married men are the most happy.
Wow.
So, like, basically, that says everything.
That sure does. Well,
Mhm.
okay, so a woman is trying to decide if she wants to get divorced. Now, on my social media, the men say over and over that women just get bored and one day they decide to leave. Now, I can tell you that is not my experience with the hundreds of women that I've personally worked with through the divorce process. And there is so much that goes into the decision. So, what do you think is the very first thing that women need to look at if they are trying to decide if they want to get divorced?
Well, so just to address your first, these men are, they the problem is, so almost 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Almost all of these women, I would say, you know, a good 99.9% of them have been agonizing over this question for a good, like, 4 years. I think that's the average. Um, Nobody comes to this lightly. Nobody just wakes up one day and says, I'm bored. I think I'm going to get divorced. We agonize over this for years. While we're agonizing, we go to our husbands. We beg them for change. We beg them to go to therapy with us. We tell them we're exhausted. We tell them we're unhappy. And by and large, we are met with, well, everything's fine. I don't know why you're so unhappy. Everything's fine. It must be you. I guess you're unhappy. You're just an unhappy person. And so we go away and we're like, well, we're not met we're not met on the partnership playing field, right? They're not joining us. Um, and so then when we reach the end of our rope and we say, you know what, I'm done. I want a divorce. They're blindsided. They're shocked. They never saw it coming. And it's the most
And let's be
disingenuous
clear.
thing. Yeah.
Right. But to them,
They actually
they
are.
probably believe that they're blindsided. They probably believe, like, oh my goodness, I didn't know.
That's right.
But they're just oblivious to it.
They
I mean,
they are.
all the signs were there. The conversations were had.
That's right. They just didn't know. I'll tell you what my ex-husband said to me 2 or 3 weeks after I finally told him I wanted a divorce. He came to me and he said, Kate, I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave. And I was
Mm,
like, huh. So what you're telling me is that you knew that the way you were treating me was not okay. You just thought you could continue to get away with it because you thought that I would never actually leave you, even though 4 months ago or 3 months ago in couples therapy, I told you I was done and that I was going to leave you. And I gave you one more chance. And you
mm-hmm.
didn't do anything to change the behaviors. Um, but you just never thought I would leave. And, to be honest, when they say, I never thought you would leave, that's because you never have. Right? So,
Right.
right. And so it is like, it's not as disingenuous as it may sound, because you've been saying for years that you're unhappy and you've never done anything about it. So they just kind of thought that you never would. And so when you finally do, they are shocked. And I think they're legitimately shocked. But that's got to change, right? That's got to change. Women's needs, emotional, mental, physical, domestic, our needs matter, and they need to matter in a relationship as much as the needs of men.
Right. I think one of the most powerful parts of the book was the stories that you included about clients that you've worked with. For
Yeah.
example, women who have been abused in various ways, who kept coming back. And in fact, one of the stories about a woman whose husband was very contrite and they started to do therapy and he started to do all the right things. And there was this roller coaster, right? They were at rock bottom and oh my gosh, she's really going to leave me. And he started acting better. And then over time, it faded away again and he started becoming abusive. Those stories, I think, are so powerful
Mm-hmm.
because, again, helping women understand that they're not alone. I think there's so many women who can read your book and will see their own marriage story in that.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do hope so. because I see these patterns play out over and over again. And so I wanted to include stories that were relatable, that I had seen play out multiple times in multiple clients. And so that people could really, really relate to what's happening.
I do
Yeah.
think a lot of women are asking themselves if they are a victim of abuse.
Mhm.
They don't know if what they're experiencing is abuse or not. And I think that your book can be really helpful in that regard.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think so too. I mean, that was, I have in there a healthy relationship checklist. So it's actually, just a very clear checklist that you could yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And one of the things that I want women to think about more than what he's doing, what he's doing, what he's doing, what he's doing is, how do you feel in this relationship?
Yes,
How do
I
you
knew you were going
feel?
to say that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I knew you were going to say
That's
that
what I
because I've
said.
read it, because
Right.
it really is, you don't necessarily have to put a label on the behavior,
Mhm.
but you do have to know how you feel about it. If
That's
your
right.
interaction with your husband leaves you feeling gross, then you have a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
If you don't feel supported, you don't feel loved, if you feel judged and criticized all the time, that's not okay. That's not a healthy relationship. In a healthy relationship, you should feel supported and upheld, and your relationships with other people should be fostered. You should not feel like you've been
Mhm.
isolated. You should
Mhm.
not feel um, down on yourself all the time. You should feel like you're in a partnership where if you go to your spouse and you say, I'm unhappy, you want to have a spouse who understands that that means that there's a problem in the relationship. And when you say, I'm unhappy in our relationship, they don't say, well, I'm fine. I don't know, that's a you problem. If one person in the relationship is unhappy, it's an unhappy relationship. And you're both responsible for making it work for both people. If it
Right.
doesn't work for one person, it doesn't work for anybody.
You're so right. So you go through the various types of abuse in the book. Because this is the Find Me the Money podcast, I want to talk about
Yes.
financial abuse in particular.
Yeah.
And what I see with my clients is they feel really stuck in their marriages when they're being financially abused, because typically they don't have access to money. So they feel trapped. They have no freedom funds.
Mhm.
Um, you know, how can women address issues like that? It's
Well,
so hard.
yeah. I mean, you're listening to the right podcast. You've got the right expert here. I mean, you are the money. You're the money lady. So I mean, really, I think it's important for women to it's important for women to have financial independence and autonomy. And that doesn't mean that you need to be hiding money. It doesn't mean that but you need to have access. If you don't have access to all of the money in your marriage, all marital funds, then you're probably being financially abused in some way. Or if you don't have money to marital funds and you go to your spouse and you say, hey, I want to make sure my name is on all the accounts and I have access and passwords and logins to all of the accounts. And they say, oh, of course. Yes, of course. You must, right? Then like, great.
Cool.
But if they get dodgy, if they're like, what do you want that for? If they call it their money, if there's
Mhm.
ever this like idea that like this is my money, especially for stay-at-home moms, right? It's not their money. You are
It's
contributing.
our
It's
money.
our money, and you are contributing to their career by staying home and taking care of the domestic labor. That is not, you don't get an allowance for that. This is a joint venture, it's a partnership, and all of the money is your money. And so, I think the most important thing is I want women to not become financially dependent on men, even if they have access to all of the money, even if they have sign ons and logins for all of the accounts. I just want women to be financially independent at all times. That doesn't mean you don't have to, you shouldn't ever commingle funds. Like, I'm sure you have all the answers for that. Right, there's commingled money and then there's separate accounts, right,
Right.
right. And so but please have your own money, please have
Well, you have
access.
a really great checklist for creating some financial independence. It was
Mm.
fantastic
Oh my
in the
God, I'm so
book.
glad you
I
said
love
that.
it.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm like, I was reading, I was like, okay, let's see how she
Let's
did
see
on
what
this.
she
I'm like,
did.
this is really thorough. It's really actionable. It's really easy to understand. I was very happy with that checklist.
Oh my God, I'm so glad, because I really should have checked in with you before I wrote it. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking, but I think absolutely right. There are things that you can do, right? You should make sure that you have, if you're being financially abused, you should have cash that you're stashing somewhere where people can, where your abuser can't find it.
Right.
You want to
It's the
start
one
working.
scenario. It's the
Right.
one scenario under which I recommend hiding money. I
Right.
never recommend hiding money from your spouse except if there's an abuse situation.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I agree with you 100%. Right? Start working, even if it's at like Upwork, Fiverr, like Etsy, wherever you can. Start work, and then make sure that you have your bank account, a new separate bank account that they're not on, connected to it on a PayPal account or, Stripe, whatever account that's just yours, right? There's got to be ways that you can start to make money, just little ways, right? Little ways. Every dollar counts when you move towards that.
All right. So I want to wrap up, but I want to leave our listeners with one final little question or topic. I've heard a lot of women say that they've tried to have a divorce conversation with their husbands. How did they make that conversation stick?
Well, first of all, you're not asking for permission, understanding, agreement, right? They're not going to go, oh, okay. Right?
Well, the traditional language is I asked for a divorce, right?
That's
No.
right.
You are not asking
You
for a
are
divorce.
not
You are
asking.
telling.
You are telling. That's right. You're not asking. You're not asking permission. You are declaring that you are done. In the book, I have a whole outline of how to have this conversation. But the short version is you are stating a fact. You are stating the fact that you are done. And when they try to argue things with you, they're going to try to take control of the narrative. This conversation has one objective and one objective only, and that is to impart the information that you're done with the marriage. When they start to take it to other places and they want to know, what are we going to do about the house? Or you can't do that. You can't make a unilateral decision about our marriage. Actually, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
This is the only unilateral decision that one can make in marriage. And that, you basically have one line that you keep coming back to, which is, I know you're upset. I'm sure you have, you're going to want some time to process this. Unfortunately, this is my final decision. I know that you're confused and you don't know, what's going to happen. We have time. We don't have to make decisions today. For today, I just want to make sure that you understand that this is my final decision. Like,
I'm going to tell you that script that you put in the book and the way you walk through how to keep bringing it back every time they try to derail the conversation, every time they want to make you feel like you're emotional, you're doing something wrong, you bring it right back to this is my final decision. That framework that you laid out in the book is masterful.
Thank you. It's helped a lot of people. And it works. It does. It really does work. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
I feel like I need to start giving away copies of your book as gifts to my clients.
Okay.
So many could benefit from it. Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Please do.
Kate, we could go on for hours. It has
Yes.
been so fun talking to you. Please tell everyone where to find you and where to find the book.
Yes. Well, you can find me at kateanthony.com is my website. On Instagram at The Divorce Survival Guide. My podcast is The Divorce Survival Guide Podcast. And the book is anywhere and everywhere. And there's a page on my website, kateanthony.com/dword, that gives you some ideas of how to buy it on the DL, a little bit more surreptitiously than just like buying it through Amazon, which might show up in a shared order history.
Right.
And you want to be really careful about that. So there are other ways, and I have just provided some examples and links for you on that page.
I love that you did that. Thank you so much for being with us today, and all the best success to you with your book sales and with your continued success in your career and helping to help women through divorce.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I love and adore you, and I'm so happy that you started this podcast and that I got to be a guest on it.
Aw, thank you.